We are live here on YouTube. Things a little bit different today as StreamYard is down, so don't have any of the pretty graphics. This is Locked On Mets. Hello to all you amazing Mets fans. The Mets barely hang on to sweep the Washington Nationals, a game that has a lot of meat to it, a lot to discuss. We're going to talk about Kodai Senga's injury. We're going to talk about how the Mets had a good offensive day. And we're going to talk about how the game almost got away. A wild set of events in this one, and I'm still trying to put the pieces of my mind back together about how all of this went down and what it means for the rest of the Mets season. The good news, the Mets got the sweep. They're 21 games over 500. They're in a great position in the National League East. The bad news, just like last year, there was a point in time where the New York Mets were sitting in a great spot. Kodai Senga had made his return from the injured list, and it felt like this team was just in the driver's seat in a really good spot. And then Kodai Senga goes down with an injury. Here we are again. But I think the Mets are in a much better position to handle it. And again, we're going to go through all of it. Let's go back to the beginning for this game here. And the beginning is a nice, comfortable cruise through the Nationals. It just felt like the Mets were just going to roll on and have their nice sweep, and everything was going great. Jeff McNeil gets the Mets off to an early lead, hits a 3-run homer. Brandon Nimmo tacks on a home run, so 4-0 Mets. Kodai Senga was just absolutely dominating the Nationals. He gave up a base hit to James Wood in the first inning. That was the second batter of the game. He would go on to retire 14 consecutive batters before issuing a 2-out walk in the fifth inning to Jose Tena, about the next batter to fly out. So he was through 5 innings, having given up just one walk, a single, and that was it. So it was such a dominant performance, and you're actually starting to think about other narratives. I'm starting to think about, okay, David Peterson had the shutout, but Kodai Senga, I mean, they're doing nothing with Senga. Everything is weak contact. He is just in complete command, and maybe it's going to be back-to-back shutouts. I mean, the pitch count was low enough that you started to think about that. Man, a couple more quick innings, you never know. Maybe Senga goes the distance too, and then we get to the sixth inning. He picks up his fifth strikeout to open up the inning, then a ground ball to Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso, it has not been something that has been hidden or something that people haven't picked up on. He has been brutal throwing the ball to first base this year. It's always been a weakness for him, but he's got the yips right now, and it's clear that he has the yips. And we've seen this in the past with Pete, and he always works his way through it. But here is the worst possible case scenario outside of a game being blown because of the yips. But even that, in some respects, would be better than what happens here, as your ace, a Cy Young candidate, guy that's leading, I think, Major League Baseball, right? In ERA, I know definitely the National League, but I'm pretty sure Major League Baseball, Kodai Senga had the best ERA at 1.47, and he is leaping to catch a bad throw by Pete Alonso, makes a really athletic play, leaps up, catches it, reaches back with his back leg to touch the base, and then it's like he got sniped in the leg, and he goes down, and he's grabbing his hamstring immediately, and, that's an IL stint. We don't know the extent of it, and we'll talk about that more throughout the show, but Kodai Senga will go on the IL, even if it is just for 15 days. I would be shocked if he doesn't. He did walk off the field on his own power, but I looked back last year, and I was wanting to see a more noticeable limp when he was walking off the mound last year or walking off the field with the calf injury, and he was walking pretty much the same both times. We can't, none of us are doctors or trainers. None of us can know until there's an MRI done, and we'll see what happens, but just a really sour note to what otherwise was an unbelievable series for the Mets, just scoring a bunch of runs, getting great pitching. What was it, like 22 consecutive innings maybe without the Nationals scoring a run until the ninth inning? I know it was at 1.19 during the game, and then Senga got hurt and everything kind of went cloudy for me, but that's where the Mets were at. I mean, they just had such a dominant series, and this is one of those things where the series win or the series sweep is great, but it ends up being a footnote to the bigger story, which is Senga. To talk about how the rest of this game finishes, to give you your full recap for those of you who might be listening to this back or weren't watching the game live, Jose Castillo comes on, gets the final out of the sixth inning, and that out was an unbelievable catch by Tyrone Taylor, full extension dive on the warning track. So a great play there. The next inning, Huascar Brazaban comes on with one runner on and one out, gets a double play ball to get through the seventh. He has inherited 20 runners this year, has stranded 18 of them. He continues to be outstanding. Pitched a 1-2-3 eighth inning as well, a 1.64 ERA on the season for Brazaban. Ryan Stanek comes on in the ninth inning, has a real tough time with it, gives up 3 straight singles. So the Mets have to go to Edwin Diaz. Diaz comes on, and it's a 4-2 game at this point, or 4-1 game at this point, with Stanek giving up the first run, and Diaz has no control of the strike zone, walks the first batter he sees to load the bases, falls behind Josh Bell 3-0, ends up battling back into that count, but Bell gets him for a RBI single. So now it's 4-2 Mets clinging to their lead. Diaz then was able to get a pop-up. Luisangel Acuna made his presence felt in that ninth inning. He made that catch look pretty easy, and that was not an easy catch on that pop-up, going pretty deep into the outfield to get it with his speed. Again, he made it look pretty simple. Then there was a ground ball. Actually, I think before that, you had the pass ball where Alvarez couldn't field the slider and a run scored, and then the tying run ends up on third base 90 feet away. But Acuña comes through on a ground ball, holds the runner, gets the second out, and then ironically enough, it's Pete Alonso who fields the final out on a ground ball to end the game. But this was a great series that now all we can think about is Kodai Senga. So I want to get back to the big story. We'll talk about that in just a second. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. The NBA Finals are in full swing. Every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action, and FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live with player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, so fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com. Place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you're going to get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So for those of you watching the stream, appreciate it. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help us get to our next goal of 14,000 subscribers. But let's get back to the story of the day, which is Kodai Senga going down. Senga, a 1.47 ERA again through his first 13 starts. That is second in Mets history. The best ERA through 13 starts was Jacob deGrom in 2021 when he had a 0.69 ERA. Memory serves, I think he finished that season with a, was it 0.91, if I'm not mistaken? Don't quote me on that. deGrom was an MVP candidate in 2021. He goes down, completely derailed them that season. I don't think that you're in that boat with Kodai Senga as far as what's around him on this team. I think the Mets are going to be fine regardless of the status of Kodai Senga. He's a luxury car. He is a high maintenance sports car, and when things are going right, there is no other car you want to have drive. But when things go wrong, you don't know how long it's going to be, and it could take a bit for that car to get out of the shop. So we'll see what happens. It sucks because he was going to be an all-star. He was a legitimate Cy Young candidate. But also, this is just the reality of Kodai Senga, and it's frustrating that it happened the way it did. And, Pete Alonso is going to be beating himself up about that throw, and rightfully so. I know fans are going to be pretty upset about it. There's nothing you can do, though. Like, there's no world where now Pete Alonso is going to be the DH in the Mets. Like, it's a fun thing to say. It's a good comment to have and get Pete off the first base. It's not happening. Hopefully he's got to work through it. And the thing that also sucks about this is it's not going to help his yips that he just ended up making the throw that put Kodai Senga on the IL. But it's also not entirely Pete's fault, too, that Kodai Senga is a little bit fragile. It's just what happens. Last year, Kodai Senga was running away from a pop-up, and he pulled his calf. So I'm not blaming Senga. You can blame Pete, sure, but it's just an unfortunate event, and that happens in every season. I'm watching after Senga's injury, and whoever the pitcher was that was throwing to Francisco Lindor right after that in the following inning, he's throwing these sliders in, and I'm seeing Lindor get out of the way of these sliders, and I'm like, man, I want Francisco Lindor to just walk to the dugout and say, I'm not going to be out there because the potential of getting drilled. Like you start to get like hypersensitive again It's almost like if you've ever seen those Final Destination movies, and after you watch them, it's like every time you're driving, you're driving in front of like the car that has all the logs on it, and you think that the logs are gonna fall off and kill you because you saw in the movie how easy and tenuous life is. Like it's like that, right? Like you just don't know. That's a baseball season. We were talking about it, all the way up with Montas and Manaea coming back. How are the Mets going to fit all these starting pitchers? They got 8 starters for 6 slots or 5 slots, and are they going to have a 6-man rotation? Are they not going to have a 6-man rotation? Well, now the guy that you need a 6-man rotation for goes down. Who knows for how long? You have Montas and Manaea coming back, and one of those guys going to get plugged in. Tyler McGill lives to fight another day, and the Mets rotation moves on from here. I think what this conversation will ultimately become after we just deal with the shock and the frustration of the injury is getting whatever the timeline is. Hopefully, this is a Mark Vientos level hamstring strain where Vientos goes down running to first base. We think, oh man, how bad's it going to be? He's already running a week later. So you really don't know how bad a hamstring can be. Every hamstring injury ever has looked bad because it's such an immediate pull. You feel it. So it's one of those things where it can look really bad, like Vientos is, and not be that bad, or it can look bad and be bad. We just don't know. Once we find out the results of the MRI and everything, then there'll be a timetable. The good news about this, if you want to get some silver linings, so we're going to talk about the short term of this in the final segment, but the one good thing you could say about this, and it's not good, but it's, again, a silver lining compared to last year's situation. Last year, he went down about 6 weeks deeper into the season. So even if it was as bad as last year, and it's a different injury, but it's still a leg injury. Last year he was in the rehab process when the playoffs began, and that's where you saw not the best version of Kodai Senga going in October. If he had 6 more weeks last year to prepare, he would have been in a much better rhythm come the time to make playoff starts. So that's the good part about this. The Mets do have some time here to get through this injury. The hope is it's not that bad and you get him back sooner than later because he was really a huge difference maker for this team. I mean, you can't look at a 1.47 ERA and say, oh, yeah, that's not a big loss. It's a huge loss. The Mets just have enough depth in their rotation that they can get by, and they have other ways to win games. As you're seeing the lineup start to pick it up, you're seeing the bullpen minus the 9th thing in this game, but largely the bullpen's been pretty solid. Another little silver lining, if you want to put another one out there, Max Kranick was not eligible to return until he served 15 days on his assignment. Max Kranick will probably be back tomorrow because you can now bring him up for an injury. So I'd expect Kodai Senga, if nothing else, to hit the IL for a couple of weeks to just rest. At that point, a best case scenario, this is a low-grade strain, and you say, all right, Kodai, you're going to shut it down through the All-Star break and, come back ready to go, completely right. Maybe you do go on some rehab starts and stuff when you're getting, towards that break. But that's like best case scenario. We'll see what worst case scenario is. Again, that is a topic for another day. This could move what the Mets do with the deadline, but we just don't know right now. So for now, we'll just keep it at that in the final segment. I want to talk about what the Mets do in the short term to deal with the Kodai Senga injury. So we're going to get to all of that in just a minute. But first, today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where'd all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start to build wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track your spending, and even plan long-term goals. And managing money through a partner is smoother than ever as you can track your shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Thank you all for watching today's live stream. If you want to be a Locked On Mets insider, go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets so you're part of our texting service. We're going to update you me anytime some news breaks, like when Kodai Senga goes down. You get a text message about that. You can ask me questions anytime. Take part in our Locked On Mets sign photo giveaways. Get the lineup graphic sent to your phone each day so you know the starting lineup without ever having to go on social media. If you want to be an insider, you can go to subtext.com/LockedOnMets. So more silver linings, if you want to call it that. The Mets are very well prepared to deal with this injury. Frankie Montas will make his next rehab start tomorrow. At least that would be online with 4 days rest. That goes well, he would be good to go for June 18th on 4 days rest. That would be Kodai Senga's turn in the rotation. So if you look at how everything breaks out, Clay Holmes, Tyler McGill, Griffin Canning, those three will go against the Rays this weekend. Mets have an off day on Monday. They head to Atlanta. David Peterson will open up that series on Tuesday. And then it would have been Kodai Senga. Now Montas could just slide into that spot in the rotation. Also, you have Blackburn. So I'd expect the Mets to try to stay away from Blackburn this weekend, which would be pretty easy to do because, again, you could bring Max Kranick up. You still have Justin Garza, Jose Castillo, Jose Buda, Ryan Stanek, Reed Garrett, Edwin Diaz, Huascar Brazaban. So you still have a full bullpen. You still have 8 arms you can go to because, essentially Senga goes down and Blackburn slides into a rotation spot, even though I don't think he'll necessarily make a start. You can make that decision after you see Frankie Montas pitch on Friday. They might decide, you know what, Montas looked pretty good, but want to give him an extra day. And so they might have Blackburn make a start on Wednesday and then slide in Montas there. We'll see how the Mets decide to do it. But the reality is they have 2 guys that can fill a spot in the rotation. If Montas needs more time, you can go with Blackburn. If not, I'm sure Montas will get the first crack because it seems like the Mets want to keep Blackburn in a bullpen role. So that's probably what they do. There was an article today about how the Mets are starting to field some offers or starting to get some interest in Paul Blackburn because of their situation, because they have so much starting pitching depth. The teams were ready to maybe inquire and see if the Mets are willing to move Blackburn. Now you're probably sitting on those offers for a little bit. Not forever. I still think the Mets would probably like to trade Paul Blackburn, get something for him, because even with Senga going down, the way Tyler McGill has pitched, you don't have to take advantage of his option and send him down. You can just keep McGill in the rotation. And so you could move Blackburn, roll with a 6-man rotation eventually. That would include McGill, Manaea, and Montas. Or you can go with a 5-man rotation and see what Tyler McGill looks like in the bullpen. I mean, the Mets still have a lot of options. They still have a ton of depth. That's why, while this injury sucks, it doesn't mean that it doesn't change the Mets' outlook this season. To me, it doesn't make them any less of a favorite in the National League East. It makes it a little bit harder. But again, Kodai Senga is like a luxury car. It's great to have it, but as long as you have your dependable, David Peterson Toyota Corolla, I drive a Corolla, it gets the job done. It gets me to point A and point B. It did all the way through those years while I was delivering pizza, and it still does now. But David Peterson gets the job done for you. He's going to take the ball. He's going to eat his innings. And now, guess what? We were wondering yesterday, is David Peterson an ace? Right now, he's the ace. I'll tell you that. Sean Manaea might be coming back in a couple weeks, and he could fight him off for that title. But David Peterson's the ace. David Peterson's all-star stock just took a big rise because if Senga's not going to be available, David Peterson has an even better shot to make the all-star team. It's just unfortunate that it goes down like this because it felt like the Mets were in such a good place with Senga. And I've talked about this before. When you get Kodai Senga like in the pocket, where it's just you have kind of looked at all the different things, all the different moving parts. He's such a perfectionist with his mechanics. When you get him in a rhythm and it's on that routine, he's pitching every 6th day, or maybe he gets, an extra day here and there, but he's always got his rest and he's pitching once a week, and he's just kind of rolling and in that rhythm. You see how good he can be. You see how locked in he can get and how he has so many weapons where, they were talking about how against the Rockies, he got away from his breaking stuff. But then here against the Nationals, now that he's now pitching at sea level instead of at altitude, he's able to get back to the breaking stuff. And he had so much success today. He's just such a good pitcher. All I care about is that Kodai Senga is right come October. And I'll say the same thing about Sean Manaea. David Peterson, Griffin Canning, Tyler McGill, Clay Holmes. These guys can get you there through the season. Come October, I want the Mets to have Sean Manaea, Kodai Senga, and David Peterson healthy. And I feel like that's a really good 1 through 3 to go through the playoffs with. Question is Senga going to be one of those guys? And if he's not, all of a sudden you look at the other options. You think, okay, well, maybe the Mets do need to be a little more aggressive at the deadline. Again, though, we just don't know until we know what the timeline is. So I can talk about this in circles for another half an hour, but the reality is what the reality is. The New York Mets continue to roll. They have now won, what is it? Is it 6 in a row? 6 in a row? 7 in a row? Someone can tell me maybe in the comments. If you have any questions, by the way, since I am live and I'm on a little different format than usual, why don't we take some questions if anyone has them? But bottom line, I mean, it's a rough injury, but the Mets are still in an interesting spot right now where you have to say they're in the driver's seat. They're how many games up in the NL East now? After today's win, they're sitting 5.5 up on the Phillies. I think the Phillies are off today too. Yeah, the Phillies are off today, so they'll stay 5.5 up on the Phillies. Phillies got the Blue Jays coming to town this weekend. The Blue Jays did beat the Phillies in Toronto recently, so we'll see how that series goes. The Mets got the Rays coming to town this weekend. The Rays definitely a better team than the Nationals, but the way the Mets have played at home, not too worried about that. And then you got that 10-game stretch coming up. And I guess the one thing I will say about this that is definitely a big blow is the fact that in that 10-game stretch, let's just say it is Montas, he hasn't been throwing well in rehab starts. And you're going to go through a 10-game stretch where you're seeing the Braves 7 times, the Phillies 3 times. The first 6 games are on the road before the 4-game set at home against the Braves. And 2 of those starts would go to Frankie Montas instead of maybe it would have been 1 start for Senga at least. The Mets might have gone to a 6-man rotation. So it still probably would have been 2 starts for Senga when you break it all down because he would have started the 2nd game of the stretch. So yeah, I mean that's the one thing that does sting about this one. But maybe Montas will surprise after some struggles on his rehab assignment. We got one question here. Can we trade Stanek and a low prospect for a good left-handed bullpen pitcher? So you're not going to trade Stanek for anything. And you should keep Ryan Stanek because we saw last year in the playoffs. I mean, Ryan Stanek was brutal all season for the Mets. And come October, he locked in. This is a guy that had a lot of playoff experience. I think Ryan Stanek as your 6th reliever in your bullpen is where you want it to be, where he's in the pen. You're not going to get rid of him, and you're going to ride the waves. He has looked bad at points this season. That was a rough outing today. He's also looked lights out at times, and he has pitched in every big game imaginable. And once you get the 100 miles per hour dialed up in October, you never know. He might end up being the 8th inning guy again, like he was last year. Do the Mets need a left-handed reliever? Potentially, but don't forget, they do have Brooks Raley. So Brooks Raley will come back. Hopefully it is before the deadline, so you get a little bit of a look at him. But I think you're definitely holding on to Stanek. And I think this bullpen's in a great spot because, yes, you can use another late inning arm, but let's not discredit or discount what the Mets have right now with Edwin Diaz, Reed Garrett, and Huascar Braziban. Most teams would kill to have 3 pitchers as good out of their bullpen as the Mets have. You have Max Kranick likely to come back into the fold. Like I mentioned, that's going to be another iron in the fire. I think Jose Budo has thrown the ball exceptionally well lately. So that's another arm to keep an eye on. And you still have plenty of talent in the system. You never know if a Felipe De La Cruz can be that left-handed reliever as he continues to make the adjustment at Syracuse. You never know if Nolan McLean gets shortened up to be a reliever because he could be an impact arm for the Mets. The reality with this Mets team is they have so much depth that it's hard to even pinpoint what they will need at the deadline. It really is. I've thought about it. I've done a little bit of digging into it, just trying to see, okay, what's out there? What's on the market? What could they get? As we talked about earlier this week, center field definitely a position that could be upgraded if the Mets decide to. They could also look at Tyrone Taylor making these diving catches in center field. They could see Jeff McNeil continuing his thing and holding his own in center field while swinging a much better bat than he has in years past. You can see Luisangel Acuna and the versatility he still brings your roster and say, hey, you know what? And you have Jose Siri. We don't need a center fielder. We're fine. You never know what the Mets are going to do. And I guess since I mentioned Acuña, I'll close the show there. I'm so torn on what the Mets should do with Luisangel Acuna because for his development, this is sort of worst case scenario. He's maybe getting in that batted game. He plays the final 2-3 innings of every game, but he's in effect, his bat is sort of rotting away on the bench. When you have a 23-year-old, you want to get him at bats. That's what he needs so that he can be your second baseman of the future potentially. But you're balancing that with a need to win now, and he's so good in his role that it's hard to replace him. Ronnie Mauricio, if you had option Luisangel Acuna because Mark Vientos came back today, and you had Mauricio now filling the Acuna role, I don't know if Ronnie Mauricio makes the 2 plays that Acuna made as easily as he made them. I mean, I guess theoretically, if we're all really playing out the hypothetical, Mauricio would be playing third and Beatty would be playing second base. But even then, I don't think Brett Beatty is going back on that. Like, you don't realize how far Acuna ran on that pop-up in the 9th inning. And that was a huge out. That was the first out when everything was spiraling against the Mets. That was a big catch. And he fielded that ball so cleanly. You had a speedy runner at third that couldn't even think to go on contact because it was in his glove and he was staring down the runner immediately. So Acuna is an interesting player right now because he is perfect in the role that he's playing. And yet long-term, it's not the best thing for him. But you got to balance the need to win right now with his personal future. And you never know. It might just mean that the Mets are going to stick with Acuna all season. We'll see. A lot going on with this Mets team. That's why I love doing this show. Appreciate all of you who tuned into the live stream. Sorry that it's not as pretty as usual without the graphics and all of those things, but I will get that sorted out for tomorrow's show. I'll be able to do some things, even if my streaming software is not working where I can't go live with all the elements. I'll be able to record something that'll look like your typical edition of Locked On Mets for tomorrow morning. Plan is to finally talk about Pete Alonso. I've been teasing this show all week. I want to make my prediction. When is Pete Alonso going to break the Mets all-time home run record? And we'll also sort of look at his season a little bit. There's a fascinating conversation to be had about if Pete should start at first base in the All-Star game over Freddie Freeman. So we're going to go through all of those things. And of course, if you learn anything more about Senga, I'll cover it. But I imagine that will be a story for the weekend. As always, thank you all for tuning in. Make sure you follow, rate, and review wherever you get your podcast. If you're watching the stream, hit that subscribe button. You can follow me on social media, Finkelstein Ryan. Follow the show at Locked On Mets. Thank you for making Locked On Mets your first listen, your first watch every day. Now, for your second watch, check out Locked On Sports Today. It's streaming 24/7 as well on YouTube, where you can check out all the latest in the world of sports with our experts from each team, league-wide experts from each league. By Locked On Sports Today, streaming 24/7 on YouTube.